ought to get along and walk beside the road. But all my needs were not a wonder to load. Show another way. I knew not what to say. You took me off the road to know the way. Girl from Galway Bay, you took me out of time to know today. Girl from Galway Bay. Open fields and skies had been my only home. Worn out boots and on my back was all I owned. The last town had me framed. Next will be the same. You took me off the road to know the way. Girl from Galway Bay, you took me out of time to know today. Girl from Galway Bay, turn to me and let me see everything. Seeing you now lets me give you something. See each other give and have everything. Now nothing to hide. Took me off the road to know the way. Girl from Galway Bay, you took me out of time to know today. Girl from Galway Bay.
Hello and welcome everyone to the 52nd episode of Eunuch Corner Club Live. That's right, 1 year worth of Eunuch Corner Club. And I would like to quickly thank the people that make this happen. Let's swap over to the OBS virtual cam here so we can show people who support the channel via Subscribestar. Iron Roots, White Healing, Heidi, and the Alabaster top the list with many others who financially support me every month in the activism and the online content that I make. Thank you guys so much for doing so. I deeply appreciate that. You can also support monthly on Entropy, which is where you guys should all be talking right now anyway, because Entropy is a strong proponent of actual protected rights of freedom of speech and such. You can say whatever you like, as well as support financially over there with paid chats and non-paid chats in the question widget. You can leave questions and comments for me and my lovely guests over there. We will address them. Also, we have Cash App, PayPal, and the usual assortment of ways to support the channel. Good morning to everyone who's here with us. And speaking of who's with us today, we're going to bring on the wonderful, the bearded Joshua Hamm. Thank you for being back again, my bearded friend. Josh, how are you this morning?
I am well. And yourself?
Oh, I'm good. I've slept well this week. I've been doing a lot of housework and self-upkeep the last couple of weeks. As you well know, we had a wonderful camping trip recently, and that was a lot of fun too. And hopefully we'll see Josh at one of those in the near future as well. So the reason I wanted to have Josh back on is shortly after our last talk on my channel, me and him and Anti-Commie, who is a supporter over on Entropy, by the way, at the gold level, we were talking offline after a sniper stream about the Go Free Lexicon, and Josh had prepared a speech to give to people where he lives in Texas. And we were talking about the nature of speaking on race, ethnicity, local inclusion, the host population, and how to phrase things in a constructive, healthy way that doesn't lie about what's going on, but also doesn't step into the previous traps people have had with language that you can be attacked for easily. We want to maintain being pristine, being the good guys, speaking a moral truth, and that things of that nature. So, Josh, the thing I'd like to start with today is talking about that speech, and then me getting to share with you some of the things that we talked about in that little private aside that we had after Sniper stream that night about the Go Free Lexicon and why it's important to use publicly. So, if you have that speech pulled up, is there anything you'd like to say about it or anything that you'd like to read from it for us before we get into it today?
Sure. I can try to. Let's see.
I'll preface it by saying that Josh knew me from my white positive activism and from, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Josh knew me from my white positive activism and speaking in a healthy manner about race, ethnicity, cultural stuff when it comes to different populations in an area, mass migration, that kind of thing. And he both liked and respected what I had to say because I don't use ugly language or exclusionary tactics. I use inclusionary tactics in the language. And that's what the Go Free method is all about, is making the oppression, the harm done to Western kind in the forefront and not pointing the finger at another group, because you can't point your finger at another group and say, look how evil those people are, and still look like the good guy yourself. You can't do that, especially in a place like America that has a lot of immigrants from a lot of different places, both white and non-white. So why don't you go ahead and tell me the reason why you wrote this speech and who it was for?
All right. Well, in background for me, which is part of the reason why it's important, is, of course, I'm a 90s kid. Mm-hmm. So I was part of the generation that was raised to be colorblind.
Yeah, me and you both. We were raised on the old on the living the American dream of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air days, right?
Yeah, content of your character, not the color of your skin. Like that's just, and I believe that is the strongest thing. Doesn't mean that we don't have different cultures in America, but culture isn't the same thing. But to say that it's
and not, also no man should be vilified for things that he couldn't control and was born into. Especially his race. That's a very ugly thing to do, and that's why we should never be that way, and why I speak out against it. So please continue.
Yeah, and the high school that I went to, Hearn High School, I was one of like 3 white kids in my class of 100.
Wow.
So when you have 3% white people in the class, the only racism that you see when you're growing up is directed at you because of your color.
Right.
And so I can understand how for some people who are in a minority status, how easy it is, because if 97% are one group or quote minority groups, and then you are the other, or some of them have been taught the oppressor, well, then you're going to take slings and arrows unjustly over things that you have not done. And I would never wish that upon others, to otherize them. And so I've just, it's been real hard for me sometimes where I'm like, I totally believe in American values, and I believe in these virtues and values that I hold dear that come to me from my parents and from my culture and my society, but I don't want to hate you for yours either.
Yeah. And I think that's an important message that we should all carry, is that we are part of Western civilization that was made by Western kind, but we are clearly the pinnacle of civilization, or people the world over wouldn't want to emulate us and move here and live like us. And I think that it is vitally important to point out, just like it's wrong to vilify smaller groups, you also shouldn't vilify the large group, the host population group, especially when it is the fruits of that civilization that everyone's benefiting from. So that's why stopping the anti-white hatred, the anti-white narrative, is so vitally important, because when Western kind are gone, the primary building block of Western civilization is gone with it, and then everyone suffers. And I think that should be something that's part of our modern discourse, don't you?
I do. I mean, people just don't seem, maybe it's because I've been to war, but you don't have to go to war. You can just go to, like, there are levels of S-hole countries.
Yes.
Okay? And America isn't on any of them. We are so prosperous, so wealthy that
even still today.
Yes. And we are so peaceful
Mm-hmm.
And people don't recognize that that's not the norm for human society.
Right.
And it's like, how do you explain to someone who takes for granted electricity, running water, even and hot water for that matter? Like
And
how do
also
you,
not having to worry about being bombed or shot on your way to the market.
yeah.
Like a lot of places in the world, even some white countries are like that. So
Well,
that's why Western civilization really is the pinnacle of safety and civilization itself, is because when you don't have to go very far. You can do it on this continent, you can do it on any other continent. There is obvious advantages to living the way that we have shaped society in the last few hundred years. And
yeah.
I think that that's more, I think that's very evident when you start traveling, like you said, especially not even being at war, but when you're part of the military, you have to be aware of these conflicts and these problems around the world, because that's where they send people like you when you're enlisted. So,
Well, and the most powerful description that I've heard that just makes sense if you think about it is in most of the world, if you want to ensure that your property is protected or whatever, you need to build a wall. You need to
mhm,
hire guards. You need to actively and proactively work to defend that from others.
yes,
Whereas in the West, you can just put up a little sign that says no trespassing, no soliciting.
right,
And 99% of people will follow that sign.
yep,
But Americans don't even understand, and Westerners don't understand how rare that is. Although Europe
yeah.
is beginning to learn quickly.
Yes, and and many places in our cities they're starting to learn that now in America.
Yeah.
So, uh, the reason that you came to me was you wanted to talk to me about how to phrase certain things to make sure that you sounded like someone of moral character, to make sure that you weren't sounding some kind of ist, and that the way you phrased things wasn't going to paint you like a villain. And much to my happiness, the way you worded things was excellent. You used healthy inclusionary language in the correct way to be inclusionary without downplaying or erasing white people and Westerners from the discourse, which I think is the correct way to do that.
Yeah.
And do you want to go over some of your key talking points in this to start
Yeah.
with today?
Well,
Sure.
we'll start with immigration. I have it pulled up here.
That's my biggest issue when it comes to statehood and that kind of thing. So please
Yeah,
continue.
and that's one of the things that's why I reached out to you, because I believe that you and I are in the same course wherein, you know, it's okay for us to have a culture and
Yeah.
it's okay for you to have a culture. Like that, there's no problem with that.
And no one should be eradicated, and nobody should be subverted from their parent group. That's evil, no matter who's doing it or who it's being done to.
Correct. And I felt like you understood that, and you had done a pretty good job of kind of threading that needle, especially in these contentious times.
Thank
Just
you.
the simple fact that you're talking about white positivity
Mhm.
on YouTube and you haven't been canceled, so you're doing
And
something.
also keep in mind, it's important that the white positive message is very important to not be anyone else negative,
Yes,
because it's very important to realize that our folks, the people that care about America, the people that care about whatever Western country you live in, whether it's France or Britain or wherever, our people, we are good natured and we love others. I made a big post recently on all my social media about how the ugly lie of racism is that for some reason Western kind white people have this built-in ism that makes them hate people who aren't like them, but that is absolutely the reverse of the truth.
you
The
could
truth
only
is,
believe that if you've never been anywhere else.
yeah, look at the British Empire, look at the Spanish Empire. For all of the negative things that you can ascribe to those people, look at the long 1,000-year history of many different empires of white people finding other civilizations, peoples, and cultures interesting and wonderful and wanting to bring back their food, their customs, the people themselves, integrating into other people's societies. It wasn't because we hate other people or we want to enslave others. That is complete baloney, absolute bollocks. And I think that that is part of the message that I like to carry forward is we are the people of light for a reason. We don't just want our people to be great and prosper. We want all people to be great and to prosper. And I think that's an important message that as Americans we should champion. Don't you agree?
I do.
So go
Especially
ahead and tell me what you have to say about immigration, and we'll use this as a springboard to move into the next thing here.
okay. We should have an immigration moratorium for at least 20 years. I'm willing to negotiate for longer, but you know,
That's a good starting point. Yeah.
it gives you a generation to begin to see where you're at.
Mhm.
Because I think all laws should be made specific to the time they're in.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make any, yeah. America and Texas have had unrestricted immigration since the Immigration Act of 1965.
Indeed.
The purpose of immigration is for the benefit of the American and Texan populace. Unrestricted and uncontrolled immigration does not benefit us. Look at the classic melting pot, fondue. One cannot simply keep adding solid cheeses into a fondue pot and expect it to actually melt together. Items must be added slowly, and after the previous contents have begun to merge, to melt, then you can add some more. But that takes time, and it takes heat, it takes pressure. It just does. We should not allow our Texas heritage, culture, and values to be destroyed, which means we must actively protect our valuable traditions and people. And that doesn't just mean white people.
Right.
Like, the Fifth Ward of Houston has their own particular culture. I think it would be wrong to sit there and just bulldoze it and bring in 100,000 people and tell them, congratulations, you're now different.
Yeah. Because not only does that destroy what was, it breaks the link in the chain to maintain what was in the regards that make society function. And that's inherently the ugly lie of the melting pot and mass migration is you can't have a melting pot, like you said, when too much is added too quickly. So when you look at all immigration of the past, even quote progressive countries like America, right, up until the 70s, they still had specific requirements on race, ethnicity, language, religion, and a very small percentage that they would allow to come in each year because everyone just understood you can't have massive groups of people who are different moving in and setting up shop because that destabilizes your country. Just like you can have one guy come and crash on your couch for a while, eventually he might learn from you and he might, develop some good work ethic and he might get back to it. But if you let 50 people that are bums and losers come live on your couch, well, then before long, your entire house is nothing but a bum wasteland. And
you have been economically destroyed because of your desire to help others.
Yeah, and you and the home that you built and the family that you've built has only suffered for it. And then you and what you've built is broken and gone. And I think that is the perfect, your fondue pot, talking about people coming into your home too much. Like that is the focus of where this should be. Because it's not that I hate the immigrant. It's not that I hate the whatever race or religious group might be coming in. It's I hate the fact that we are lied to and told it's good for us and that we are evil or Nazis for standing up and saying, no, we shouldn't have this. This is wrong and destructive and unfair to us. And that's why I think that the focus of all of this conversation when it comes to why immigration is bad, it should be through the lens of we are being victimized as Western kind in our own countries. And this needs to stop because when you look at the pairing of physical replacement of the host population with the hatred and belittling and dehumanizing of that population by media and government, those are the primary building blocks according to the UN for genocide. I don't wish genocide on any people, especially my own. And I think most Americans would agree with that sentiment 100%, regardless of race or religion, don't you?
I would if you could sit there and get them past the fear that even simply being associated with white people, by definition, makes you a hater, a racist, a xenophobe, etc.
And I think that's exactly where the Go Free lexicon comes in. Yeah. That's why I think putting the term anti-white and anti-whiteism in place of racist or racism is very important because like we've discussed before on stream, which I know you agree with, in the modern discourse, when people use the R words, racist and racism, it always has that connotation, that built-in building block of white people are at the pinnacle of this pyramid of oppression and white folks are inescapably evil colonizers. Mm-hmm. And so when you replace that by saying anti-white and anti-whiteism, it immediately grabs people and makes them think, okay, this is something new that I immediately understand and get, and it's bad. And I think that's why we should use that term instead.
I concur. But the what I'm saying is, even if you don't use the term racism and racist, if you're talking about white people positively as a group, that in and of itself has been vilified.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's because of the decades and generations of anti-whiteism we've been fed.
yeah.
And that's again, I think that's part of the melting pot lie and the mass migration lie. So another important thing that I like to bring up is using Western kind instead of white people, because like we know, the term white people has had a negative tilt in the news since you and I have been alive, basically, or definitely since we've been adults. And when you say Western kind, it does mean white folks, but it doesn't carry that natural connotation that we just discussed, and it's inclusive to the people who align with the white folks in the West. Like, for example, we got a lot of blacks in America that have been here as long as mine and your ancestors have been here, some of them even longer. Those people are part of America, they're part of our ethnicity, and there's no reason to exclude them when we're talking about the people who love and align to Western kind as not just a people, but an archetype and a way to live. I think that's also a very important positive message that goes along with using the term Western kind in place of white people. Because when people hear that, they don't think, oh, well, this man might be evil because he's talking about white people as a group. Even though we are talking about white people as a group, but we're also talking about those who align with us and who are a positive part of our ethnicity, whatever it may be, Canadian, American, etc. So have you tried using the term Western kind instead of white before?
Yeah. I talk about Western civilization.
Do you get positive results when you talk about it that way?
Thus far I've only been talking to, because we're still in
yeah, I know your campaign's in its infancy still. I know. I know you're still getting there.
So mostly I've been talking with like Tea Party groups and local patriot groups and everything. So, they're already well received towards it. So I haven't
cool.
Talked to average citizens to find out what their reactions would be.
Very good. Very good. Speaking of talking to locals and what you're doing locally, let's segue now to do you have your campaign site set up yet? Because that was one of the things that you said you might have ready for today.
I wish I did. You want to know the problem of dealing with volunteers?
Oh, I get you. So what we'll do is at this point, I'd just like to share your two links that you shared with us last time. That would be your public profile, which is your Twitter profile right now. I'm going to share that in all the chats for everyone to have.
Okay.
And then there was another link you had me share last time about a Texan group. Would you like me to share that one for everyone too?
Yeah, tnm.me.
Yeah, I've got it right here on the list. I just wanted to see if that was what you wanted me to share. So take a moment and tell people about your burgeoning campaign and how you're connected to things like the Texas Nationalist Movement and other localism groups, if you are.
Yeah, I'm connected with quite a few different Texas groups because that's my culture and my heritage, And I lived in Tennessee for a couple of years, and I know they're much the same way, where it's state before country. That's just how we operate.
Especially here in Appalachia, we consider ourselves the real Tennesseans.
Yeah. Knoxville, and Nashville are a little different, or Knoxville's Kentucky, but
yeah. Knoxville's Tennessee too. I think there's an
area.
Okay, but no, please go ahead. Tell me about your connections and investments in localism, and we'll move on from there.
Yeah. Well, okay. So after I think you were there with me. But I know we met a couple times in DC. I think
we did
as well. But I don't remember.
Oh, did you say the 6th?
Yeah.
No, I was laying in wait in case we were going to cross the Rubicon. I was just across the state line if it was go time.
10-4. Well, and since I wasn't up there at the Capitol, I was passing out food and stuff. I don't know exactly who I was there because it smelled very Fed boy-y to me, and I figured having a quick egress could be important.
Oh yes.
Anyway, basic thing is that after January 6th, we'll back up even further.
Sure.
A year and a half ago, I was just your basic, average, everyday dad who didn't really pay that much attention. I was a conservative guy. I grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh maybe once a week or something. I disliked Hannity because he's a, braggart. There were
I never trucked with Hannity either. He was never for me.
He just talks too much about himself. If I wanted to hear about you, then I would ask about you. I want to hear about what's going on. But
about the only MSM personality I've liked at all in the last decade's Tucker, and he's even hit or miss for me sometimes.
well, sure, but if you agreed with him all the time, he wouldn't be as interesting.
Yeah.
So, I was, I'm multi-generational military. I grew up on the manna and honey of America, and believing that I had a duty to pass on this tradition and heritage of liberty for my children, because I truly believe that liberty is only one generation away, and we're witnessing that.
Yes, indeed.
So, I paid a little bit of attention. I voted in elections. I paid some attention, but I wasn't one of the political autists. I had things to do. I wasn't that interested. And since I didn't go to college, I didn't get all of that ridiculousness pumped into me. I joined the military and was working as a diesel mechanic. I had to work with my hands. I had to be grounded in the real world. And you fast forward, and by mid 2020, I'm paying more attention. I'm starting to get upset. I'm trying to, I'm seeing what's going on. I'm like, I didn't even vote for Trump in 2016 because I was concerned that he didn't really understand the Constitution and would be a tyrant.
Now, I think a lot of us have made mistakes like that in the last 5 to 10 years, because I think that the more that we got involved and started paying attention, the more we realized that everybody involved at the federal level, even at a lot of the governorship levels, they're just a bunch of shady snakes, and they don't give a crap about American values, Constitution, freedom, any of that stuff. They're all just these heartless internationalists that care about money.
And speaking of snakes, blue-collar men, shovels, use them. So the point being that I went and attended a couple of rallies. I started doing more. I became more active in Don's chat, and I was like, okay, here's a guy who's.
And we're talking about Don the Pleb, by the way. You guys know who that is, most of you. Yeah.
Talking about Don the Pleb, and I was like, okay, so he's trying to legitimately spread the spirit, aka Thomas Paine style. These are brochures and pamphlets of American liberty and freedom in the 21st century. That's what he's doing, basically, right? And so became more involved, went to January 6th, and I was so frustrated out of what came out of there, because what January 6th should have been was a warning to the government of, hey, we can reach out and touch you if we want to, but we don't want to. We want you to listen to us.
And do what's right. Yeah.
We want you to be responsive, et cetera, et cetera. And instead, the message they chose to receive was, we need to clamp down as hard as we possibly can and become as authoritarian as possible, because we can't let these plebs have a voice in their own nation.
Yep.
Which is probably not the best way to go about it, in my opinion, if we're legitimate. But
that speaks to the illegitimacy of the entire narrative. Is because if you're a narrative that is afraid of the truth, well, that's kind of a bad mark on your legitimacy,
Even regardless of whether or not it's true or not, if your watershed moment of a quote unquote insurrection, is, I know what we'll do, we'll go totalitarianism, then obviously, over if you can't control 500 people, why should I expect you to be able to govern 350 million
or 50 million heavily armed and organized ones?
So, and then from there, I was like, okay, I am now officially frustrated enough that I'm going to start doing things. So I literally called my county GOP office every day, every other day, every third day. Like I was just calling and calling, and I wasn't getting a response because
Yeah, I remember on the last stream we had, you talked about dogging them for weeks and weeks until they got back to you.
Yeah, until finally I got a phone call, got an email, and they're like, "Okay, we hear you. All right, here's the Young Republicans group. Go join them."
Okay.
Like just standing up, and I was like, "Okay."
And that got you to where you are right now, which is you're running for a small local office, and you're doing so on this platform of caring about Texans first, that kind of thing.
I would not say it's a small local office. I am running for Texas House.
Oh, you're running for a representative seat. Okay, I thought you said you were running for something smaller. My bad.
I wanted to, but as I interacted with local groups, they were like, "Wait, you're in District 12? We need you to run for HD 12."
Oh, hell yeah!
There, he's awful.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, that's great.
There was a group that was like, "We have 150 members. We can. I guarantee you, we can get you at least 30 to go knock on doors and support you." And I'm like,
"Oh, that's amazing.
If this is what the people want, I
do it." Well, I mean, you look at you. You're a dad. You're a veteran. You've got a nice beard. I mean, those three things right there. That's good for getting votes right there.
Most likely.
Speaking of getting votes and running for District 12 there, I think that Texas especially has a lot of people in it, especially Mexican Americans and people of Latino descent, that appreciate the message that you have, and they will respond well to the Go Free lexicon, because a lot of the people that are of not just Anglo-Saxon but Latino heritage as well, they love this country for the religious freedoms and the liberty idea of, we're going to create this space. This is for my family and my community, and the government and nobody else can tell us what to do as long as we're not being evil and hurting other people doing it. And I think that in Texas especially, you have a lot of really strong sentiment with whites, and Latinos are basically white. They're like white adjacent in America. So it's basically they are part of the host population that has made America what it is. So when you say Western kind,
especially in Texas.
Especially in Texas, when you say Western kind instead of white, that automatically pulls in Latino people of Mexican heritage, because they feel that way too. They're part of Western kind. Yeah. And I think that's why the Go Free lexicon applied intelligently is going to unify people in the way we want them unified, in a healthy American way, instead of unifying them in a negative way against someone else.
Yeah, Texas is built upon the concept of the Texians. And the Texians were the original Texas independent minded people who made Texas separate. And it was the prior Mexicans and the settlers from America that came in who decided to make their place free, and both worked together to make that happen.
Yeah.
Granted, during the Reconstruction era, there were problems that occurred between the original Texian Hispanics and the new government that was instilled. But the point being that Hispanic culture is a part of Texan culture.
Absolutely.
And I've been trying to get people to understand. We have almost no milk left, by the way, honey. Okay. I was trying to get people to understand, like, if you just talk to Hispanics and you talk to them about hard work, about family, and about God, and then especially if you bring in pro-life as well, like, they're Republicans, they just don't know it. The good Republicans, like, but you don't know how to talk to people. Like, it's the most mind-blowing thing ever, where the concepts that we believe in, the people who want to talk about them the most don't know how to talk to other people.
Yeah.
It's like we hold these truths to be self-evident, and therefore you're just going to, receive these blessings and this understanding from the sky. And it's like,
but it takes more than that.
Works. It's not how any of this works.
Yeah.
You have to actually talk to people, and you have to, especially when they've been fed propaganda every day of their lives, it's going to take effort to get them to understand what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, and how this is beneficial for them.
We're going to go ahead and take that speech off the screen there. I realized I'd had it up for the last 5 or 10 minutes. I'm really sorry, guys. It should have been just our faces. I meant to take that to minimize that when we started talking. But now you can see our faces in their wonderful glory to the fullest here. Um, the segueing from that with the words that we choose to say to people to get them motivated, to get them active. One of the things that I think people, especially in America, are most motivated by is ending oppression. And I think that's why when we talk about the oppression of Western kind by the anti-Western narrative, that is a excellent inclusionary statement that white people will hear and understand, Hispanics will hear and understand, and anyone listening in the media, they're not going to hear boogeyman, Nazi, evil white man when you say Western or Western kind. And I think that's a very important element of using the Go Free lexicon in an intelligent way, because you and I, we want to talk to people and get them motivated and active. We want them to hear a message of hope, inclusion, positivity. And when we say we're going to stop the oppression of Western kind, we're going to stop the theft of Western children's future, all the kind of talk focusing on Western kind, people that are white know that. People that are Hispanic know that you're talking specifically about them and their heritage, and people who may be immigrants here from, let's say, India. We have a lot of immigrants from India. We have a lot of immigrants from China. We have a lot of immigrants from Japan. Other
People
places
immigrated because they want to be Americans and experience American
exactly
value.
They want to align to the archetype of Western kind. And
Yes.
I'm going to share this book real quick here. The book that I get the Go Free lexicon from is called Go Free, and the subtitle of that book, as you can see here, is aligning to the archetype of Western kind. That's the whole focus of this language, of this lexicon, is to get everybody, specifically in America, because the guy who wrote it's American, but he means any Western country. But we and you are looking at this through the lens of America. We know that people the world over already want to align to the archetype of Western kind, or they wouldn't move here and want to live like us and benefit from this great society. So when you use the language Western kind, Western people, anti-Western narrative, you're gonna speak positively with truth and power that everyone that we need to hear the message is going to hear and identify with. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
I have a secondary thing up here. Let's see. Oh, that's just okay. That was the window that you had. I thought you might want to share something else, and I didn't want to.
No, my bad.
That's fine.
I can
No, it's cool.
Button.
I'll go ahead and put the link to that book I'm talking about in chat for everyone. This is the Go Free manual where you get the meme curatives and meme pathogen breakdown, as well as the explanation of the core 5 building blocks, the primary 5 anti-white terms, which are or the white positive terms, which are anti-white, anti-whiteism, anti-white narrative, Western kind, and white erasure. And as we know, for public discourse and getting people's attention and getting people to unify, using Western is an excellent synonym that you can replace with white to not sound as, like we talked about earlier, to not trigger people's meme pathogens where they have that aversion to the word white. Saying Western instead works great.
Yeah.
So,
and especially because those of us who believe in Western values have been granted a gift this last year, because law and order is a Western value.
It is
being destroyed. And so, and it's important, because the thing about politics that a lot of people don't seem to understand is that it's sales. It's sales and marketing for power. Okay. And so if you're going to sit there and be in a position in which you're going to have the power to actually be able to protect your community peacefully through politics, then you're going to have to be able to sell that message to enough people to get them to buy into it and to want to do it, right? And you're not going to get there by violating their norms and by standing on your principles and shouting from the rooftops. You can stand on your principles, but you have to do it in an intelligent way. One of the best examples I have of this is almost everybody that we know would agree that school choice is a good thing, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So then why don't we have it? The reason I would say we don't have it is because people have not yet experienced enough personal pain to where it affects them personally. And so
they're still taking for granted the things we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Right. So if we change the way that we sell it, the way that we market it, and we go, hey, We need to protect our children from these government schools, the brainwashing they're doing, the violence that's in them, et cetera, et cetera. Would you help me protect our children from these schools and from the ideology that's being put upon them? Well, all of a sudden you've changed what you're selling. Now you're not selling liberty and freedom, these amorphous concepts that most people are going to be like, I have liberty and freedom. I can work where I want to, I can pray how I want to, et cetera, et cetera.
And they don't realize what social slaves they've become. They're basically living in an open range tax farm for these for these awful people that have enslaved us with everything from pharmacopoeia to porn and illegal drugs and having
you're not going to wake them up.
Yeah,
you're not.
So our message is for the people who know at least the basics of this and want to ironically go free from it.
Right. And so you have to understand that if you're not going to wake up your average person in terms of seeing the amount of pain that they're currently in, because human is incredibly adaptive, and we will adapt to the pain that we're at. And and then we'll look around and we'll be like, well, we're better than them, so I guess we're good, right? But we don't look back to go, where should we have been? What was Western civilization? What was, the American project of freedom and liberty? What were these things? And do we have that? Do we have the ideal? And are we moving towards becoming more of that shining city upon the hill?
Yeah.
People aren't going to do that. And so, it is the role of a politician, a good politician, to sit there and marshal his community and his people to go, this is the direction we're trying to move in.
Yeah.
Because a good politician and a bad politician are indistinguishable from fathers.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Well, and of course, people that follow my channel know that I believe in the divine order, the natural order of things. And that is father-like, moral, strong, powerful men at the apex leading people towards what is best for everyone.
Well, so a bad politician or a bad public servant of any sort is indistinguishable from a bad father, because we know and we hate abusive and absentee parents, period.
Yep.
Right. And at best, most politicians are absentee, and quite a few of them are abusive as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Wanting to be controlling, right? And we hate them for that once we recognize what it is. Okay. The inverse of that is not a politician who just goes, this is the way it should be done, and preaches out into the ether. No. The inverse of that is a good politician who stands up and goes, this is the way that we must go, and begins using power and force through peaceful political means to achieve those ends.
Yeah.
If you need order, that doesn't just mean you go, okay, guys, there's order. At that point, you're absent, which makes you bad. You have to actively work and enforce these rules, these rituals, these laws to make it so.
Yeah. And someone in the chat just brought up that everyone from Jesus to Schopenhauer, the bodhisattvas that sat by the road, the path is narrow, and not everyone is going to walk it with you. But the father, the shepherd, etc., that archetype is to lead people who can see the path and will walk it with you. And that's where you get, the 100 trained men can defeat the 1,000 rabble, etc., etc. What you're talking about is getting these good men, such as yourself, in places of influence and power, because we know there are many people, men, women, children, even immigrants, that are going to realize, hey, this person is speaking about a truth that I know, that I want to emulate in my life, and I'm going to follow him, because he's not just talking about, amorphous abstractions. He's talking about serious things that we can know and engage with directly to make a difference. Yeah. And I think that is sort of the nature of, I've talked to a lot of America First politicians. I don't know if you're technically part of America First, but you get my drift. Like people who want to kick out the crap, replace these cronies with people who actually care, that kind of stuff. Localist politicians like here in Tennessee. Almost all of you guys that I talk to say the same thing. We are tired of these childless, bad parents, so to speak, being in charge and just letting the kids run wild and letting people in the neighborhood do whatever they want. And I think that is a very strong message that millions of people are just sick to death of, especially after last year with all the riots and stuff being downplayed and brushed away, like, oh no, this is just A, B, C, D, and E, or this is white people's fault, or this is the fault of harsh racist policing and all this other crap. Like, no, that's not what any of that was. That was a sign that the people at the helm are absolutely rotten to the core, and they hate people like me and you. And I think that there's millions of people in America that are sick to death of it, and they want something to change. And I think that's why people like you and the other America First folks I talk to, you're going to go places and you're going to get at least a lot of votes, if not get in those seats and become those representatives. And I hope that's going to make a difference.
It's possible, but the whether or not I win is secondary to the fact that people must stand. They must. There's no the only alternative is the continuation of the path that we've been on, where we were fat and happy and we're pleased with the relative peace and prosperity that we had, and we accepted it as maybe our divine right, whatever.
Yep.
And so we didn't tend the engines that made our society run.
Yeah.
They have fallen into disrepair.
Yeah.
And
I think the enemies that wanted us to fail, that's what the whole Long March through the institutions was about. It was, I think, to control the zeitgeist of American awareness. They wanted us all to be anesthetized by modernity, so we just didn't pay attention to the people that were taking control to destroy everything.
Well, especially because if you talk to your average quote unquote bad person, they're not going to say that they're bad people. They're not going to recognize what they're doing is bad. They will consider themselves good people doing good things for good reasons, right? And that's really easy to do when you don't have a North Star to guide you. And that's where Western civilization, Western history, Christianity, paths of morality matter and are important, because you need some sort of North Star. And if you don't have a set of values, a set of virtues, and a set of beliefs that are guiding you, then what you'll end up doing is you'll end up placing the state in that position, and you will create the state as your God, because everybody has a God-shaped hole, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
If you don't fill it, then the state will fill it, and you will naturally put it in that position. Because,
as we've seen happen the last couple generations, yeah.
Well, if your rights don't come from God, where do they come from? And the natural human reaction will be to say, well, if my rights don't come from God, because I don't believe in God, then the apparatus that is supplying them to me is the state. Yep. And therefore, the state must be God. You don't have to intellectually go through all that. That's just what happens.
Yeah.
And once you begin worshiping the state as your God, then you're perfectly willing to sacrifice 5-year-olds on the altar of COVID-19.
Progressivism. Yeah. Or anti-whiteism specifically. So since we're coming towards the end of the stream, because I know that you're a father and busy, and we have other things to get to today, both of us. There were 2 other things that I had slated for us to talk about if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You said an inspirational figure to you was a man from, I think, Louisiana named Huey Long.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about him?
We can a little bit. I would preface it by saying, like many people, there are things that I don't agree with on him.
Oh, sure.
But it doesn't matter, because you have to know and understand that once you move into into the hot seat, you're going to take rounds. You're going to take flack. And that just means you're over the target. But I already know that it's going to be used against me. But the concept of Huey Long, as difficult as he may be for modern, sensibilities, was that he recognized that the political structures that were in Louisiana were incredibly corrupt. But he also realized that he could not change that from the outside. So he just created a corrupt organization to take over Louisiana politics. And then he used Louisiana politics to help his Louisiana fellow residents, right? And so because there's going to be corruption, there's going to be grift, but what you do with it does matter. The like it. And like I said, I'm not saying that I necessarily like some of the corruption and everything else, but he did more good with his corruption than most people do who are sitting there and preaching about their sensibilities. He actually accomplished helping his people in Louisiana. And by proxy, he ended up helping many people in the nation. And he did it in the 1960s without talking about race. That's impressive.
And also, he had a pretty big following too. Like he was, I read some of the wiki. It's really huge. I didn't read all of it, but he even had a possible ambition to run for president, didn't he? At the end,
Yeah, he did. He
and
died
then
a little young.
yeah, because somebody went to assassinate him, and he was shot. Supposedly, they said that he actually got shot because he was in the crossfire of his bodyguards, but that wasn't talked about until much later after the fact by forensics. But either way, somebody came to assassinate him, and I just find it funny that whether
when people going against the state.
yeah, I mean whether it's somebody as vilified as George Lincoln Rockwell, or somebody as uplifted and mostly beloved as this Huey Long guy. It's kind of funny how people get killed when they talk about radically disempowering or changing who controls the state, and that should be indicative that we are up against real danger and real power, and they fear us. And so let that fuel your fire, everyone listening. That if they didn't consider us a threat, then that would show that they were powerful and had real authority, but they don't.
Well,
So that drives me to think about that and to know that each day.
And that's one of the things that I'm talking about. So to bring it back slightly to TNM, they're trying to find more people to run for local office. They're looking for people to be mayors, city councilors, sheriffs. Heck, if your police department has an elected chief, run for that. Contact them. They will help you. They're helping me. I'm just a diesel mechanic. Like, if I can do this, you can do this. There's no reason you can't. But specifically as relates to Texas and our desire for greater autonomy, the one of the things that I've been talking about to people is that, does a law exist if no one enforces it? So if you and your fellow citizens in your community control the mayor, the city council, and your county sheriff, and you sit there and between the three of you, you go, this law that they have said is null and void in our county, and we're not going to enforce it. Not only are we not going to enforce it, but you feds don't have the authority to come in here and kidnap our people. Period.
10th Amendment, baby. So I think what you're saying is true. It rings true with me, because I push localism, because I've given up on federal crap. But taking control of our local areas is vitally important, because if you, like you said, if you got a sheriff and a mayor and people that control your PTA and your school board and your church groups in the local area, who all say we are putting our foot down about this gun ban crap, this mass migration crap, this America Forward stuff, where they're going to force every municipality to take on welfare programs and diversity quotas and all this other nonsense. Yeah. If you have people in control of your local area that are willing to say no to the feds, that's what it takes. That's what it takes to make real change. It starts at a local level to resist this cancer.
This entire system that we currently have is predicated upon the belief that the people have granted the federal government this power and this authority. Okay? So all it takes to destroy it is simply for people to say no. The greatest example I have, and it's not a perfect example, but it works for the purposes of explanation.
Okay.
Is you look at Poland and you look at Czechoslovakia in the 80s, right? They were, quote unquote, members of the USSR. But were they really? Because they had already begun to act as independent states. And because the USSR was financially and morally bankrupt, they were unable to exert the force and power over distance required to control those satellite states. Does any of this sound familiar?
Oh yes,
Right?
it's like I'm seeing in Appalachia around here. People
And so,
are they're just sick of it. They're sick of all of the media lies. They're sick of the anti-white, the anti-Christian sentiments that are put on all the even Fox News these days. Like it's all has this ugly globalist anti-Western message, and people are sick of it, man. They see the evil in it, and all you got to do is talk about it. And that's
right.
why I encourage you. Like you've already got the Go Free book, right? Like you ordered it, right?
No, I'm
Oh,
waiting
I thought you did. Okay.
No, I'm kind of trying to. I am running this campaign on as much of a shoestring as I can.
Okay. Well, then I'll buy and send you one. I thought that's fine. It's only $10. I'll buy and send you one. But that's the reason why I encourage you and everybody else in local it's running for local office, understand this book, because just like how our enemies used language to defeat us, we can use language as weapons in this modern war. And using the right tools of language in the right application is how you are really going to get people to pay attention, to listen to you, and to unify against the anti-Western agenda, the anti-white agenda. And I think that using those terms correctly, understanding I used to call it the mind poison. Jason in this book calls it meme pathogens. But the mind poison that makes people recoil when they hear about nationalism, when they hear about white folks as a group, that kind of thing, you can defeat those. You can overcome those meme pathogens by speaking in the healthy ways that we talked about here on the channel today. So I'll buy you that book today, and I'll get it put in the pipe to send to you. So with that being said, we have reached the 1 hour mark, so we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. We had no engagement from the community today. Through any kind of super chat or donation or anything. We had some active chat in the YouTube chat, both positive and negative, that we're going to step over for sake of time. So is there anything that you would like to leave us with as a particular message, or anything that you would like to share with us, ideas, websites, links, or anything, or any events that you're going to be at you'd like to shill before we get out of here today?
Yeah, I posted it last night on Twitter, but
I've got your Twitter pulled up already, so just tell me what it is.
Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association.
Okay.
And their website, if you get a chance to put that up.
I got it.
They're trying to. What they're doing is they are actively teaching and training sheriffs and Leos at the state and local and county level what their duties and responsibilities are according to the Constitution. So, no, you can't kick in that door. There's a Fourth Amendment. And so the more that you can stop that at the local level before it goes to the incredibly corrupt judiciary system, the better it is for us.
Right.
And if we as people are demanding this of our sheriffs and of our peace officers, then that's what we'll get. They also are they're doing training with the sheriffs specifically in regards to sheriff is an office in the state. It's a constitutional office in the state. And so your sheriff can actually stand as an intermediary for you in anything. So, for example, let's say that you had a problem with the school board and they try to arrest you for disturbing the peace or whatever else, and you get arrested. You can actually talk to your sheriff and request that your sheriff appear in your stead as your representative.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. That's
yes.
neat.
So now all of a sudden, does this political office have standing in a court? Because these are the problems we keep having, right? Oh, you don't have standing to try to tell these people what they can and can't do as a parent.
That's what they said about the big erection last year. Remember, they threw all that out for not having standing. So that's,
they just did that in Arizona.
Oh, about the audit?
Over the audit results. Yeah. And it's going to keep happening. And so one of the ways that you can get around that is it's like, oh, well, citizens can't do it. Fine. We'll put a sheriff there. That's a constitutional office of the people. You can't just throw them out. They're a part of your system that you say has legitimacy.
Very good. Very good. And
so
thank
I
you for sharing that
encourage,
with us. That's really cool. And that's called the CSPOA. The CSPOA is the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officer Association. I just shared the link for everybody there. You can find it on Josh's Twitter, and I will be sharing that again right now in the chat. Josh is concerned about the things that we're concerned by. He wants to make his local area better in the 12th District of Texas. Please support him in doing so. And even if it's just sharing the link and sharing his Twitter around, everything helps. Please get actively engaged with those who want to make things better for people here in America. And if you don't live in America, get actively engaged with those who want to make things better for you and your people where you live. So I think on that positive message, we're going to wrap things up. We're right at the hour mark. I'm glad you were here with us again, Josh. I look forward to having another meeting with you in a month or two to see how your political career has progressed. I'm definitely going to get you a copy of the Go Free book in the mail. I thought you already had one. I would have already sent you one if I knew that. But we're gonna get that rectified right now as soon as we get off stream. So thank you for being here again. Thank you for listening to what I have to say, and I thank all of my wonderful viewers and supporters for being here and just helping the positivity about America, positivity about our ethnicities and our race come to the forefront of discourse as it should be. And we will see you guys this coming Monday night for another episode of Discordant Dragons. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.